All right, today we are going to look at 6.5, more two-step equations, part 2. Okay, so the last lesson we looked at two-step equations with the one with the parentheses or over a whole fraction bar. Today we're going to look at ones that have fraction or decimal coefficients. So very similar, just instead a little bit more difficult because they've got fraction or decimal coefficients. Okay, so let's go ahead and write this down. All right, so let's go ahead and do a problem. Now you can either continue this from just the notes from part 1, or you can just start a new notes. I'll just kind of do it as a new notes, but you can do it as a continuation if you'd like. All right, so here we go. 1/4 parentheses d minus 3 is equal to 15. Okay, so what we learned from part 1 was, remember, when we had the parentheses, the first thing we want to get rid of is the thing outside of the parentheses, right? So the first thing we want to do is get rid of the not the 3, okay? As we draw our wall here, we don't want to get rid of the 3 first. We want to get rid of the 1/4, right? Because it's outside the parentheses, right? And then we'll get rid of the 3 later. This is different than in lesson 6.4, when you had two-step equations and you want to get rid of the plus or minus first. In this case, we're going to get rid of that 1/4. Now, how do we get rid of the 1/4? Remember, this is 1/4 times d minus 3. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to divide, but we don't divide by fractions. Instead, just like we learned in lesson 6.3, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay. So I'm going to multiply which is 4/1. Why do I want to multiply by 4/1? Well, we know that multiplying by 4/1 will accomplish some of our goals here. It'll cancel out the 4s, it'll cancel out the 1s, and all I'm going to be left with is d minus 3. Now I do 15 times 4, or 4/1, which is 60. All right, so we see what I did there? I got rid of that 1/4. First step, get rid of 1/4. Okay. Second step then is the last part, real simple one-step equation where I say, okay, I know what to do now. I see this is a minus 3, so I'm going to add 3 on both sides. And what am I left with? I've got cancel out. I've got d is equal to 63. Okay, let's go ahead and check it. My original problem was 1/4 times d, which I'm saying is 63, minus 3, should equal 15. Well, 63 minus 3 is 60. So 1/4 of 60, that becomes a 1, that becomes a 15. So I get 15 is equal to 15, checks out to me, and I'm good to go. So it's very similar. It's very much what we did on more two-step equations, part 1. It's just now we have that fraction coefficient, which was what we dealt with in 6.3. Okay, so just adding one more layer of difficulty. Let's do another one. 5/9, parentheses, v plus 3 is equal to a negative 40. Okay, 5/9, parentheses, v plus 3 is equal to a negative 40. All right, so first step, let's go ahead and draw our wall right here. We are going to multiply by reciprocal, right? Which is 9/5. Again, how do I know what to multiply? Just flip that over, right? Because we want everything to cancel. So we just kind of multiply here by 9/5. Let me move this over here. Okay. All right, we see that the 9s cancel. We see the 5s cancel. So what am I left with? I'm left with v plus 3. And then, now remember, I got a negative right here, so we got to be careful. Okay. Sorry, this is a little bit sloppy. Let me fix that. All right, I see that the 40 and the 5 cancel. That becomes an 8. Don't forget about the negative. So I've got negative 72. Last step then is subtract the 3. And what do I got? This cancels out. I'm left with just a v is equal to, again, that's not going to be negative 69. Negative 72 minus 3, or plus negative 3, is negative 75. Now, you can, I really recommend checking your answers, especially when it comes to quizzes and some of your homeworks. Double check your answer, okay? Because if you can double check, you'll see, oh, whoops, I made a mistake somewhere. You can go back and fix it. Sometimes we force that answer to be right, but and we really want it to be, but we should be able to look at it and say, okay, let's do our check here and make sure. So here's our problem, 5 over 9 times, and again, we use negative 75 plus 3 should equal negative 40. So let's see if we did it. Negative 75 plus 3 is negative 72. Okay. Let's see. So this goes in. That becomes a 1. That becomes a negative 8. So now I've got 5 times negative 8, which is negative 40, which is equal to negative 40. And there you go. So again, these problems are done just like the ones we did before, both in 6.3 and last lesson in 6.5 part 1. So these are skills that we do know how to do, but again, it's just adding a little bit more difficulty kind of as we go. All right, let's look at one that has a decimal as a coefficient. Okay. Okay, decimal coefficient. So like this. There's C here. All right, 0.2 parentheses C minus 3 is equal to 10. All right, we got a decimal out in front now. Oh, those seem to be a little bit troublesome. Well, again, they're not that bad. They're not that bad. We can definitely take care of these. So how are we going to do that? All right. First of all, remember, our first step is going to be, after we draw our wall, we identify our variable as C. Our first step is going to be move the variable, or move the decimal. Let's move this one over. I don't like 0.2, so let's make that a 2. But again, once you do on one side, you got to move that one over here. So 10 becomes 100, and 0.2 becomes 2. Okay? And now it's just a simple problem, just like we did in 6.5 part 1, where it's like, okay, now what do we do? Do we get rid of the minus 3 first, or the 2? Remember, the 2 is on the outside of the parentheses, so we're going to take care of that one first. So now the next step is going to be to divide by 2 on both sides. What happens there? That cancels those, and I'm left with C minus 3 is equal to 50. All right, and now we're into our last step. Our last step is going to be to add 3, because I have a minus 3, so I'm going to add 3 on both sides. So my final answer should be C is equal to 53. All right, let's go ahead and check it and see if we got it right. I'll do my check down here. 0.2 times 53 minus 3. Again, 53 is the answer that I got. Put it in red here. should equal 10, which is where I started. Okay, 53 minus 3 is 50. 0.2 times 50, we're hoping that's 10. Well, 2 times 50, remember, is 100. But we have to we have one decimal place here. So I'm going to put one decimal place there. 10.0 is equal to 10. Looks good to me. And there's our answer. Okay, so looking back at these three problems here, if we have a decimal coefficient, we move the decimal out, just like we did before, just like we did with our rational coefficients in lesson 3 of this chapter. And on these ones, right, if we have a fraction, we don't freak out. We just say, oh, I know how to get rid of a fraction. We do that reciprocal action there, right? When it's multiplying by a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal, and it gets rid of it on both sides, right? So again, if you understand what's happening, then you can undo it. So if I know, for example, on this problem right here, that I have d minus 3 and then times 1/4, I know that I can multiply by 4/1 and then add 3 to undo it and get back where I started. I want the solution to be just the variable all by itself. I want to isolate it, and that's how I solve these problems.